So Vlogmas has finally arrived and I had a few ideas of what to do this year, but I decided to go with the theme of winter training. So behind me I have a Christmas inspired pole layout, and Gabby and I are going to go through some of the exercises you can do with it. Now it's only a 9 pole layout because I actually don't have that many poles here, and they are all different shapes and sizes because that's what we have. So anyone can do this. You could make it smaller and actually do it with 6 poles if that's all you've got. So I'm going to get on and get warmed up and then we will crack on. Hey? You could look a bit more enthusiastic.
So in case you can't tell, this layout is meant to look like a Christmas tree, and it's actually a fairly useful layout with a few different ways of riding through the poles, but the layout just makes things a bit more interesting, as well as meaning you can do multiple exercises without having to move the poles in between, which is always quite handy. So let's firstly look at our circles. Now I try to position these layouts right on the centre line and with one set of triangle poles between E and B, so that gives us a few different size circles for this one. Now I don't mind if things aren't exact with pole work, in the sense of doing a 20 metre or 15 metre circle. As long as they kind of stay soft and supple and go where you ask them, that's fine by me. Sometimes you're limited by where you can put your poles in your arena or the size of your poles, so don't worry if you can't quite get it 100% right. So we do actually have a 20-ish metre circle right in the middle here through the middle set of triangle poles. And then we can actually make a slightly smaller circle with the other set of triangle poles and the 2 trot poles either side of that. You could even ride through your 2 end sets of poles to make a circle kind of in the middle. And I quite like to play around with half circles through the poles as well, and it kind of helps me gauge how well they can bend from one rein to another and how good their balance is. Gabby's fairly good at this, but it does make you have to prepare as well, which is obviously really important. The obvious exercise with this layout is the centre line. So I like to add in some transitions on here, but that's easier said than done, and it really does test your straightness and your accuracy of your turn both in and out of the centre line. So Gabby found it quite difficult to stop in the poles and then continue again at trot, which in fairness is quite hard because she's got to kind of find that impulsion straight from the halt, and it's a bit more impulsion than she'd have to do on the flat without the pole. So it's definitely something for us to work on and hopefully she'll get better at. We've been working really hard at halting square normally without any poles, and if it's not been square, we've been working on her being able to kind of square herself up. I think the addition of the poles for her the first time kind of threw her, so I changed where I did my halts a couple of times to see if that made it any easier. And once she'd kind of done it a couple of times, she got back into the swing of it, and after I think our halts were overall pretty good. She used to be one of those very annoying ponies that would always swing her bum out one way, I think to the right, probably due to weakness or more likely me sitting slightly wonky, but we're so much better with square halts now, which is brilliant. I like to have lots of little breaks as well. It gives Gabby a chance to have a good stretch and a breather, and gives me a little breather, and then we can go again when she's feeling a bit fresher and things aren't getting stale and kind of tired each time. You want to keep it nice and fresh so that they're willing and they're able to do the exercise. If they're getting tired, they need to have a good stretch and a good break, definitely. So another exercise I like doing with this layout is I like adding in kind of a partial change of rein across the diagonal mixed with the centre line. It is in some tests, so it's worth practicing anyway, but it's a lot harder than you think, and I needed to make sure I prepare myself well enough to straighten up so Gabby knew where I was asking her to go. It's really easy to kind of throw them off balance here, which I definitely do a couple of times because I wasn't preparing her enough for the change of direction, and then we'd lose a bit of rhythm and it'd get a bit wobbly. It definitely highlights if I'm not kind of communicating with her well enough about where we need to go and setting up the new bend early enough. It's quite a good one to see areas that you need to work on. But if you want some easier changes of rein, then you can obviously go straight through the points of the triangle as if you're just going across the diagonal normally. Sunset behind your head makes me feel. Or slightly more difficult is 2 half circles through the middle of the middle triangle. They still kind of test your accuracy and how well you prepare, but they're a little bit easier than that first one. I think it's quite good to build each exercise into each other as well. So, for example, adding in some circles after your centre line. Something to survive when all is over. Or even add in some small half circles coming off the centre line. That's something I like to do as well. And then realistically, I just like to play around with it, and I try to make the exercises flow into each other as nicely as possible. You know, adding in some transitions as well, almost making it like a little dressage test with lots of figures that are utilising the poles and obviously lots of transitions. I think with layouts like this, or just layouts in general really, you can make it as easy or as difficult as you like by linking different exercises together and obviously adding in transitions. So you can do all of these that I mentioned in walk, trot and canter, depending on the ability of you and the ability of your horse and where they are in their fitness. So Gabby struggled more with the canter poles, so I changed it up a bit and added trot transitions over the poles and then a transition back to canter rather than just straight canter poles, which in some ways made it easier for her because she didn't have to coordinate her canter over the poles. But in other ways probably a little bit more difficult, but it was good for making sure she's forward off my leg as well and she's listening to the transitions and she's kind of going up and down in those transitions when I ask her to. But we will work up to canter poles. It's not something she's ever really been very good at, which I think goes alongside her lack of jumping skill and her kind of coordination. So tweaking the exercise or any of the exercises to make it a bit easier for her is absolutely fine. But yeah, there's lots of little different exercises you can do with that. Like I said, you can make it as easy or as difficult as you like and just have fun with it. The whole point of pole work is obviously to help the horse out and to help make them stronger. Some exercises help with your straightness, like the centre line, some help with your bend, some help with kind of your suppleness and your changes of bend, like the 2 half circles or like your change onto the centre line from the diagonal. You can target whatever you want to target with these exercises, so you really can make it your own. There's no kind of right or wrong with stuff like this. So yeah, this was the first of hopefully quite a few Vlogmas videos. That is the plan, but things don't always go to plan and the weather has not been very kind to us recently. So the idea is to do another pole work layout exercise in a couple of weeks' time. But in between that, there will be some other winter training videos to go alongside. So keep an eye out for that. If you haven't subscribed, please do, and you'll get notified when there's a new video. And hopefully this was helpful and a bit of Christmas inspiration to do some pole work, because we can all do with inspiration to do pole work sometimes. So give it a go, see how you get on, let me know, and I will see you in the next one.